Hi, T.O.T. Carlson here, and once again, we're checking out the Death Wish franchise. I've gone through and reviewed 4Ks and Blu-rays of the previous Death Wish films, and today we arrive at the fifth and final installment of the original series that starred Charles Bronson, that being Death Wish 5, The Face of Death. I'm going to unbox this release and share my opinions. Nice, simple, and to the point cover art with Bronson's character there. Sometimes this movie is simply referred to as Death Wish, The Face of Death, without the Roman number 5, so either title is acceptable, really. Underneath the slipcover, it's the same art, which is kind of disappointing because the Death Wish 4 release actually had different art on the slipcover than it did on the inner sleeve. Inside, just plain with a disc, no reversible art or anything printed on the inlay, so that's a little lazy and kind of disappointing, but not too different from the Death Wish 4 release. I'll read the description of the film as follows from the package. No judge, no jury, no appeals, no deals. Superstar Charles Bronson returns for his final appearance as the iconic dealer of death, Paul Kersey, in Death Wish 5, The Face of Death. After battling on the streets from coast to coast, vigilante Paul Kersey has moved back to New York. But when his beautiful fiancée Olivia is killed and her daughter is kidnapped by a kingpin of the underworld, Kersey finds himself back in the war. Kersey's plan to live anonymously is shattered when he learns that his fiancée was the victim of a protection racket run by her ex-husband, the psychotic Tommy O'Shea. One by one, Kersey hunts down the criminals. Once again, upholding the law becomes his way of life. And this time, in the ultimate take-no-prisoners death wish, it's for good. It's no secret that I love the Death Wish films. Seeing street trash get their comeuppance at the hand of Charles Bronson is always a lot of fun. Death Wish 5, again, was the fifth and final film in the series to feature Charles Bronson portraying his character Paul Kersey. Unfortunately, this installment simply does not hold up to the others. I'm not saying the other movies were paragons of cinema by any means, but they at least managed to give us some very charismatic bad guys, some brutally violent killings, and a lot of entertainment value for the B-grade schlock that most of them were. This, on the other hand, has villains that feel like generic mobsters. None of these villains are sympathetic, interesting, or much of anything. I mean, the movie borderlines on being boring at times. I mean, the most interesting villain they throw at us is a transvestite, a master of disguise, and I'm not really sure how I feel about that character because he feels like he belongs in a different movie. Paul Kersey doesn't even really get a whole lot to do here, and sometimes he feels like a supporting character in his own movie. I mean, the other movies, violent and gritty as they were, they certainly had a bit of, campy feeling to them at times with some charismatic, over-the-top bad guys. And again, these generic mobsters here, they just did absolutely nothing for me. I mean, you don't even get a whole lot of scenes of Paul Kersey wielding his gun and going and waging war on people. I mean, he does kill some bad guys in slightly more creative and less violent fashion, but it's just like, is that really what we want in a Death Wish movie? I mean, the villains are boring, Paul Kersey doesn't get enough to do, and it just doesn't really amount to much in the long run. By this point, the series had certainly run its course. I've read rumors that the young girl in the film was supposed to take over as a new vigilante in a sixth Death Wish film. That never came to fruition, and maybe that's for the best. There wouldn't be another Death Wish film until the 2018 remake starring Bruce Willis. That's going to get a 4K release in a few months, so I am looking forward to that, and I'll certainly cover that on the channel when the time comes. So this one's really only for completists, certainly far from the best installment in the series. On a more positive note, the print is actually in very good shape. This Blu-ray disc does look pretty solid. There's not a lot of print damage or anomalies. I wouldn't say it's a great transfer that just stands out and is one of the best I've ever seen, but again, the print's in good condition. The color palette does tend to be a little on the dull, muted grayish side, but I think that's just how the movie was originally shot, so not a bad-looking disc. I think it could look better, in a native 4K on an ultra-high-def disc, but I don't know if we're ever going to get this movie in 4K, and honestly, I don't think it's any great loss if we don't, because again, it's not my favorite movie in the series. No bonus features other than trailers and a commentary track. I wish we could have gotten a little bit more here, but again, the Death Wish 4 release from Kino Lorber wasn't a whole lot different. So the transfer is decent, but the bonus features are lacking, and of course the film itself is lacking. I mean, it's easily the weakest of the 5 original Death Wish films. Completists, I think, will want to get this one to complete their collection, but again, I would rent before you give this one a blind buy. Are you a fan of the Death Wish films? What's your favorite one of the original 5 starring Charles Bronson? Comment down below and let me know what you think. Also, remember to subscribe to this channel for more content. I'm always posting new videos. And make sure you give this one a like if you found it helpful. I'm Taylor T. Carlson. I'll see you next time.